Our next guest this evening illustrated this worry in a tweet on Friday saying this: today's hotter than expected 0.3% rise in the July PPI is only the beginning. Future, even larger upside surprises are coming. The worst part is that by the time the U.S. economy officially enters a recession, inflation will be too high for the Fed to stimulate with rate cuts. Yeah. Here now to weigh in on the current status of our economy and how well Bidenomics are working, chief economist and global strategist, the founder of Schiff Gold and owner of Europac Bank, our pal Peter Schiff's back on the program. Peter, how about it? Am I right when I'm saying that these lies of 7, 8, 9% inflation are way off? Because the prices we've been paying, and again, maybe it's California, but I travel, every month I travel. I see these prices across the heartland, the South, everywhere going up. They may not be as bad as the Golden State, but they're not as cheap as stuff was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, well, I think the CPI was deliberately redesigned in the early 1990s to understate inflation, and that's what it does. And so I think it's more accurate to double whatever the official rate is, and that's probably a close estimate of the actual rate. So if we're down to 3.1, that's probably 6.2. But, you know, the only reason that we went down from the official rate of just over 9 to just over 3 is because oil prices collapsed because Biden raided the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And also you got a big rise in the dollar on foreign exchange markets because speculators were bidding up the dollar based on the Fed rate hikes. Well, the dollar rally is over, and there's not that much oil left in the reserve anymore. So I think that's why oil prices are up about 30% from the lows a few months ago, up about 15% in the last month. And now you're going to really start to see those headline CPI numbers moving back up in the other direction.
Yeah, and again, when you talk fuel prices and rent and home prices, those three major things, and say, well, they're down a bit, so then consumer price index has shifted and inflation's shifted. That's great, but that's only three sectors. I mean, when folks are out there buying their everyday average goods and services, that stuff is up, and I mean up a lot.
Well, but rent's going up too, and in fact, with mortgage rates now in the 7s, probably headed for 8% before the end of the year, people can't afford to buy homes, especially when the prices are still near the record highs. So if you can't afford to buy, you're stuck renting, and the landlords know this, so they have the ability to raise rents because their tenants don't have the alternative of, you know, a 3.5% mortgage anymore.
Yeah, look, I'm living that right now. Just happened to me. You know, landlord called, don't want to do this to you. Gonna raise it. The max California allows per year, 4%. So here's inflation. Thanks. I mean,
and remember too, a lot of the landlords, they have mortgages on their properties, but they don't have a 30-year fixed. They probably have like a 5-year adjustable. So a lot of your landlords, they're seeing big increases in their debt service.
Great point.
They need to raise rents to cover those costs.
Yeah, I mean, it's trickle down, right? If your government doesn't know how to get a handle on this stuff, you can't be mad at everybody for trying to either make a buck or pay their bills. And so, yeah, I mean, your landlord might not be a slumlord. He might just be trying to survive and pay that mortgage on that house because he's getting hammered as well. I'm really upset about how they've got the mouthpiece, Raggedy Ann girl, Jean-Pierre, out there every day touting Bidenomics. And then you had Biden just last week, he was out talking about the environment and brought up Bidenomics again. They're trying to embrace what Republicans labeled them as a complete disaster and try to do a spin on it just by word of mouth, trying to convince the public. Does that work, Peter? Does that ever work to convince the consumer, hey, it's better than you think it is. Don't believe your pocketbook.
Well, I don't even know what Bidenomics is.
Me neither.
I mean, what has Biden done other than, you know, increase government spending and add extra regulations into the economy? I mean, there's nothing economic about that. It's just a complete disaster. I mean, just look at the results, and it's only going to get worse as time goes by and the inflation rate accelerates and the economy tanks. So I don't even know what they're talking about with this Bidenomics.
I like the tweet that you sent out, by the way, and everybody has been kind of jumping on the bandwagon after you put this out. I've seen different talk show hosts from Joe Rogan and Louder with Crowder, the Mug Club, and a bunch of them now commenting on your tweet about the UPS drivers. And mainly, not just because of your tweet, but because what it says about the establishment of the university system. And so check out, this was an article that dropped last week about UPS drivers making 170 grand, right? Plus benefits. So then Peter put out, since UPS drivers will soon be earning 170K per year, it doesn't make sense for most people to borrow huge amounts of money to spend for 4 years in college for starting salaries of 50K when they can earn over 3 times as much right out of high school driving a truck. Peter, I couldn't have typed it better myself. Look, I wanted to go to college, didn't have the money, didn't want to go in debt. I went in the service, took the GI Bill. 30 years later, I've been doing the same stuff since I was 18 years old. And now I make a decent living at it. Probably a hell of a lot more than if I'd have went 100 grand in debt for a journalism degree from some woke-ass university that wouldn't have taught me about libel and good, honest reporting, but more about a left-wing narrative. And now I've been debt-free for decades.
Yeah, unfortunately, education at this point is a racket. The vast majority of people would be better off skipping college and just getting a job. If you want to learn, you got the internet, you got AI, you can teach yourself with the help of all this technology. You don't need these overpaid teachers unions and universities and all the money they're spending. The reason that the educational system got so bloated was because of government involvement. On the federal level, it was subsidized, guaranteed government loans, then direct government loans. K through 12, it's the teachers unions.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, most Americans would be better off just learning on their own and not having to waste all that time and borrow all that money.
Well, Peter, last question, and you always say the same thing, and I know it's going to be a while till we get out of it. But unless we reduce spending and unleash capitalism, right, deregulate some things and just let the things take their natural course and stop spending, how do we get out of this? I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel until we change this regime in the White House.
Yeah, remember, whenever you hear Biden talk about reduced inflation, you have to remember that basically inflation represents the difference between what the government collects in taxes and what they spend, because we don't get all that government for nothing. When Joe Biden says we're going to have all these new government programs, but nobody who makes under $400,000 a year is going to pay for it, he's lying, because everybody who makes under $4,000 a year, $100,000 a year, is paying the inflation tax. Because when the government spends money, it doesn't have, the Fed prints it. And when that money gets printed, everybody's money is worth less. Everybody's savings, everybody's paycheck, and prices going up simply represent the value of your money going down. And that increase is a tax. It is the inflation tax. And as long as government spending is not being cut, the inflation tax is going to keep going up.
There you go, folks. And with Mr. The world's coming to an end climate agenda Joe Biden killing fossil fuels, then you're going to have oil prices high, which means gas is high, which means shipping every good and services around this country costs more. So folks, at the end of the day, it's going to trickle down to you in every single fashion. Because whether they're a major corporation or a mom and pop, if they got to pay more to get their product to market, you're going to have to eat the cost. That's how it goes. So we got to get rid of this guy as soon as possible. Peter Schiff.
Including those UPS driver salaries. We all pay the bill when we ship something UPS or buy something that we shipped UPS.
I'd rather have them make 170 than some of these liberal-ass professors that are milking 200-300K on campuses around this country, which causes prices for our kids to be 50, 100, 200K for an education. That's a load of you-know-what. Peter Schiff, as always, a pleasure having you on the program, sir. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.